arrays the first. So tomorrow we're gonna continue with arrays. So it's arrays 2 tomorrow. Um, but for this one, we're gonna get into why are arrays useful? What are they? And how to use them. So let's use like can I have like a volunteer who wants to give up some of their personal information? I'm gonna ask some questions. Okay, cool. What is your first name? Christelle. Awesome. What is your last name? Oh, cool. Awesome. And then what is your, I guess, hometown? Hampstead? Is it Hampstead? Oh, cool. Awesome. Is this Hampstead, New Hampshire? Oh, okay. So I'll say home state. That's home. Is hometown one word? I don't know. And then let's see. What is your? I guess. Well, okay. What is your favorite country? Oh, nice. That's awesome. This. And then what is the last country that you visited that wasn't the U.S.? Ooh, okay, that's awesome. I do not know how to spell that. Turks and Caicos. Oh man, I'm terrible. Cool. It's just wow, it looks amazing. All right, Turks and Caicos. Um, okay. Now what is your Let me think. Okay, this is good. This is good. Um, actually, do you have like any siblings? Cool. We have a twin sister. Cool. So the one sibling. Okay, cool, great. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Um, so we just got a bunch of information about Christelle, right? And it's pretty cool. And uh, we've sorted them in like individual variables, so like we know what they are. Now there's an issue. The issue is that let's say there's someone else, right, that I want to gather information from. Okay. And for the sake of time, I'll just make it up. But like, if I want to do the same thing for someone else, right? This name is taken, right? First name, so I can't do first name again, right? So this like let's say this is Bob. It says identifier first name has already been declared, right? So okay, let's call it first name 2, okay, and this is gonna be Bugs, and last name 2 equals Bunny. Hometown equals I'm not super sure. Say like LA. Home state equals California. Fave country equals I'm not sure, Canada. Last country visited equals Mexico. Num siblings equals 0. And then all of these things have a 2, so I'm just gonna let's do this. So okay, so I've like basically done the same thing for another kind of individual, right? Okay, so this works, but yeah, hometown too. Thank you. So what if I have like 100 people, right? That's a lot of variables. And this is also like this isn't like everything there is, right, to a person, right? Like I could have asked so many more questions, so much more. There's a lot more data, right, to Christelle, that I could have like 100 variables probably just specific to her. And now imagine multiplying that over every single like that many times. It's just not scalable. And it's prone to typos. Like you just saw me like forget this, right? So like that I kind of messed that up. And like what if I copy and paste this again and don't change all the twos to threes, so some of them I leave as twos. And so it's just like it's just not a good time because it's really hairy. So that's where arrays are super useful. Okay, so an array, right? An array is like a box. Okay, an array is a box, and the way you set it up is through the square brackets. Okay, and why is a box useful in general, right? In real life, why would anyone use a box? It's so that things just like aren't spread out everywhere, right? You have this one nice consolidated place to keep everything. It's the exact same thing for an array. Okay, so this array right here is actually a legitimate array. It's just empty. It's sort of like an empty string. So it's a string that has nothing in it. Instead of that, it's a box that's empty, right? So if I console log array, it's this empty box, okay? And just like a string, I can use the dot length property to see how long it is. So I can say, what is the array dot length? And it's 0, right? Just like a string, an empty string has a length of 0. And so in this array, we can put in everything that's sort of like related, right? So this would be like Christelle, I'll call it Chris box, okay? And this is Christelle, Desiree, Hampstead. So I'm just gonna kind of like spread it out like this. Hampstead, NY, Dubai, Turks, and Caicos, and then 2. So now we have this one go-to location that has everything we need about Christelle, and that's it, right? And so for Bugs Bunny, we just need like another array. It's called like Bugs array or Bugs Bunny box or something. And so now if I console log first box, awesome. So everything that that we know about Christelle is in this one place. Okay, it's encapsulated in this one, encapsulated in a single variable, and we don't get this crazy like pollution. This is called namespace pollution. Okay, where we're just like using up way too many variable names unnecessarily. And so, just like a string, I can actually get the length of this, right? And the length of this isn't like the length of like this string plus the length of this string. It's not that. It's just how many things are in this box. How many items am I storing in here? And there are 7 things, right? Yeah, there's 7 things in here. Okay. Any questions so far? Oh, okay. Good question. I wish. No, you can't. So you're saying can I put all these and convert it into an array, and sort of like disperse of these variable names or something? What you so you can't do that, but you can put a variable that's defined somewhere else into the array. So this was Chris. So I'm gonna bring this up here. Put this here. So, but in the case of this, right, I can say let Bugs Bunny array, and in here, instead of putting like bugs, Bugs Bunny, etc., I can actually put the variable name itself. So I can say first name 2, last name 2, and let's say fave country 2. Sorry. I feel weird coughing. Last country 2. And so I'm going to console log Bugs Bunny array. And we get the variables that came in here. And so you can put things that have been defined previously into here, but that's not going to like release this namespace. Like, it's still gonna be there. Oh man, you're making me so self-conscious, Angie. Um, so yeah, and you can also like mix and match this, right? So there's Chrisbox here, right? And so I can actually take this array and actually stick it in this array. So after this, I can put Chrisbox. And so this array has these 4 things, and as the 5th thing, it has another box in it, right? And there's nothing wrong with this. You can totally do this, right? And this is actually pretty common. And that's how you would probably organize things in real life. Or like if you get a package, like if you order like a bunch of things from Amazon and you get it, it's usually like a big box that has like some stuff sort of like by itself, and then there's like maybe a smaller box inside of that, and that has like more stuff in it. That's pretty much exactly what this is. Okay. Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna continue to use this example, and so now let's say like I want to grab each individual item in here, right? So I'm gonna say Chrisbox, right, at the index that I would like to kind of engage in. And so let's say I want to get this one, right? The indexes in an array is the same system as a string. Okay, so if I have a string and this is hello, right, there are indexes in here. And so to get the string, the letter that I want, I do string bracket and let's say 2, and this is going to give me this thing at the second index, right? Arrays use the exact same thing, indexing system, except it's like this is an index, this is an index, this is an index, right? So this is at index 0, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so Chrisbox at 2, right, is going to be Hampstead, because that is at index number 2. So you're gonna see that arrays and strings are like almost the same. They have similar functions. They have similar methods. Okay, and what's also cool is you can actually reassign what's at that index. Okay, so this thing is Hampstead, right? But I can actually, so this is like, let's see, retrieving a value, just like doing the array bracket whatever, just like a string, right? You can also overwrite a value. So this is, if this is retrieving a value, overwriting a value, as in replacing a value, is almost the same. I can do Chrisbox bracket 2 equals, so I'm gonna overwrite it and store something else there. Okay, so let's say I'm gonna do like Shanghai. So now I am so it's actually the same, right? Chrisbox bracket 2. I'm using the exact same syntax, except I just put an equal sign, and suddenly I'm just like changing what's there versus just like retrieving it, right? So if I console log the array, we see that it's been replaced. We see that we've changed the value. We've overridden the value there. Cool. And so just like a string, you can iterate through this array. Okay, so I can say for let I equals 0, I is less than, instead of string.length, right, we do array.length. Except what is the name of our array? It's Chrisbox I++. Okay, and here I'm just going to console log the i's, which is the current index. And so we get all the indices in here, right? It's just the numbers. And so how do I grab each value? I use Chrisbox bracket I, right? In the same way that you would do string bracket I for each character in a string, you would do the array, the name of the array bracket I, to get each individual item, like this, right? Except the number is just going to change according to I. Cool. And as always, I like to save this as its own variable, so we'll call this like L. And L just stands for like element, right? An array element. Okay. Cool. And then what we can do, I mean, we can do stuff like, okay, if the element dot length, if the length of the element is greater than, let's say, like 5, console log it, right? So if there's a string in here and it has more than 5 characters, let's console log it. So if L dot length is greater than 5, console log L. So we should only get the longer elements. Cool. Any questions? Oh, good question. So I tend to use it pretty interchangeably. L is also fine. So I tend to use const if I know that I'm not going to be replacing this thing ever. And so as kind of a review, right? If I say const taxes equals 80% and I say taxes equals 0%, oops, that's not allowed, 0%. I can't reassign it, right? I can't reassign that variable. And so in this situation, like what I'm doing is for this iteration, I'm actually just defining this element once, and I'm not planning to later to be like, okay, L equals like something else, right? That's not my goal. So because I know that I'm not going to reassign this thing, I'm just like using const for it. But that doesn't mean that you have to use it. What's also cool about const is if you use it and later you have to reassign it at some point, then you can just switch it to a let, right? So you can always like start by using const, and then switch it to let if you like need to reassign it. Now for something like this, right, we can't use const here, right? Because I is changing. I is changing because I do I++. So what does that mean? That means I has to now become 1, right? I'm reassigning it to 1. So if I use const here, it fails because it can't add 1 to 0. Okay. Or I'm gonna make this let also. Sorry. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go into some type of stuff, bracket access, bracket assign. We just did this, and then we're gonna do some basic methods, and we'll find out like what is a method. Okay. So as we saw earlier, right, everything has a type, right? So if I do type of 700, it's a number, right? And remember, when you use type of, it's always all lowercase, right? Don't do type of. So type of number gives that. There's a weird thing and highly unfortunate thing about JavaScript, where if you do type of an array, right, this gives object. This gives object. So it doesn't give an array, but rather an object. And this is highly confusing because in a couple days we're going to learn about another data structure called objects, right? And that looks like this, like A1, V2. This is an object, and it's very similar to an array, except it uses these curly braces, and it has like these like colons, and it has like, these commas. And so it's very different, right? And if I do type of, like, what is the type of this thing? It's also an object. So we have a problem, right? Because both of these things are going to display object type. So how can we distinguish, how can I differentiate this thing from this thing, right? An array from an actual object. And this is where we start to learn about JavaScript's kind of like quirks, right? And some of its issues. that arose due to it being a language that was written in 10 days. And so I'm pretty sure like the inventor of JavaScript himself has like apologized for this. But to check if something is definitively an array and not an object, you use something a lot worse, which is array with a capital A dot is array, again with a capital A, parentheses, and inside the parentheses you put the thing that you would like to check. The thing that's either an array or not. Okay. So this says true. Yes, this is an array. Yes, this is an array. False, this is not an array. Right? False, this is not an array. So the moral of the story is, moral is, if you want to check whether something is an array, do not use type of. Instead use array.isArray, parentheses. Do not use, I guess I'll do this, do not use type of x, instead use array.isArrayX. And I know this is just so shitty, but gotta live with it. Any questions? Okay. Cool. So let's go into array methods then. And this actually is going to be, this whole lecture is going to be pretty short. So let me just let's look at all the methods. So we have length, okay, push, pop, shift, unshift, index of slice, index of slice includes, reverse. Okay. So we have push, pop, shift, unshift, index of slice includes, and reverse. This is what we're going to go over today. And then arrays part 2 tomorrow is just going to be like more of these things. And so what is this thing? So what are each one of these things? This is what we call an array method. Okay, so this is so an array method, right, is a function that's attached to an array, right, and like basically like follows. So I'll say, so it follows an array using a dot, a period, and the name of the array, or name of the function. Okay, so basically, right, the dot push method, okay, is a function. So just think about that for a second. Dot push is actually a function, okay, and actually all of these things are functions. Okay, and it's a function. How do you know this is a function? This is a function because it has a name and it has parentheses afterwards, right? Remember yesterday we were talking about, like, you know, just because you define a function doesn't mean you're going to call it, doesn't mean it's just going to work, right? You have to actually call the function using parentheses. And so because all of these methods, right, you use it using the name of the method and the parentheses, it's a function. Okay, and so dot push, right, specifically if I say dot push x, okay, it adds x to the end of an array, to the end of an array. So the way you use this, right, is it follows an array using a dot and name of the function. And so we're gonna do, well, let's have a sample array. Okay, so array has 1 2 3, and I'm gonna do array dot push parentheses and then the thing that I want to add. Oh, excuse me, man, this is really rough. Okay. Thank you. Um. Oh man, I really love sneeze again. It's gone. Okay. Unselect the array, and so we have 4. We have 4 added to the end of an array. Okay, so this is how you add things to an array, right? So earlier we saw, like, we defined this array called ChrisBox, and we put everything we wanted to inside there, right? This is like after I've defined the array, like after the fact, can I continue to put things into it? And yes, you use push, okay? And push specifically adds it to the end of the array, right at the end. And so if I push more things, it adds more things to the end of the array. Okay, and this is an array method. Why is it an array method? Because there's a dot here. It's a function that it's literally a function called push that I'm calling. I'm invoking it. I'm executing it, right? So that function is being called with a variable 4, and so that's basically what's going to go into this array. And yeah, just remember that this is how you add something to an array. It's not like what a lot of people think, which is like if I ask people like, hey, how can you add 4 to this? A lot of people try to do this: array plus equals 4. Right? Let me just like add 4 here, and that actually looks pretty intuitive, and that's a good guess, but that's not how you actually append something to the end of an array. This is how you add, like, you know, like 4 to like an actual number, right? Or this is how you like add maybe like a string value to like another string value. But to add something new into an array, you actually can't do the plus. You have to use dot push. Okay. Yeah. Great question. So yeah, it's built into JavaScript itself. It's built, so it comes out of the box. You don't have to install anything except for JavaScript to use these things. And you can actually look at, you know, all of these things in depth by going to a website called MDN. MDN is amazing. It's called the Mozilla Developer Network. And so if I go to MDN array, there's like this whole like article on what an array is, and it's all like JavaScript, right? And there's a section called methods, and the methods, right, are bountiful, right? There's so much. I actually don't know all of these, and some of these I've never even used before. But there's a lot. We're not gonna do all of this, obviously, but yeah, you can look at each one individually. So we just did push, right? So here's push. So push method adds 0 or more elements to the end of an array and returns the new length of the array. So it's adding all these things, and you can like do like run this and like do like sort of like edit this and change it. So MDN, I super recommend it. I would bookmark it. More information here, examples, right? It's really, really awesome. I use it all the time when I'm at work and I like forget how something works. Okay, so that's push. Any questions on push? Cool. Awesome. Okay, so pop, right, removes from the end of an array. Removes one element from the end of an array. And the thing with pop is there's no like, you don't put anything in here, right? You don't have to specify anything. It just automatically removes the last thing in this box, whatever it is. You can't specify which one to remove. It's just going to remove the last one. So going back to this example, if I say this and I do array.pop, array.pop, make sure you have to call it, right? Because it's a function. It's going to take out the last element. So I'm going to console log array, which shows that it's gone, right? So I can just pop pop, and we get an empty array because I took out everything. Okay. And what's cool about pop is usually when you like remove something from the end, you want to like hold on to that value, right? You want to do something with it. So if I remove 3, right, I probably want to store it and do something with it. So you can assign this itself to a variable. So say let removed equals this array.pop. So first of all, this is going to still remove, right? It still removes 3. Okay. This still removes 3. And it stores that thing that it removed into this bucket removed. So if I console log removed, it's 3. Okay. So pop is super useful. It gets rid of something from an array and then stores it in a, optionally, right? You don't have to do this. You can just do this if all you care about is just removing it. But if you want to remove it and then use it for something else, then you want to store it into a variable, and that variable will have the thing that you removed. Cool. What if you want to pop number 2? Great. So how do I want to get rid of this one? That we'll learn about tomorrow. So to get rid of, so actually this goes with the like a similar question, right? What if I want to push like a in the middle, right? Not at the end. So to put something in like somewhere in between, or to remove something from somewhere in between, you have to use another method that we're going to learn tomorrow called dot splice. Dot splice. We cannot do it using pop. Pop 2 is a really good guess. I wish you could do this, right? That's a good guess. Oops. But it actually just ignores the fact that you put 2 in there. It's just going to take the 3 out. So there's no way you can specify which index you want to remove using pop. Pop will always just take off in the back. Same with push. Push will always insert in the back, and there's nothing we can do about it. If you want to, if you need something a little more specialized, we're going to use dot splice, which we'll learn about tomorrow. Sneaky, yeah. Yeah, it's always sneaky when like they don't error, right? If they don't like show a warning or they don't show an error and they're like, and they just like slyly don't do what you're asking them, right? That's a little scary. Okay. So shift and unshift are pretty much like the alter egos of pop and push. Okay, so shift is just like pop, except it removes from the front of the array, and it's always from the front. We can't specify, so it removes one element from the front of an array. So if I'm just gonna copy all of this, bring it in here, and I'm gonna uncomment this. Whoa. Uncomment this. Oops. Instead of pop, I'm gonna do shift. Okay. So we have this array 1, 2, 3. We shift, which means I'm going to. I don't know where these words come from. I'm going to shift it out, I guess. I think pop makes a little more sense. So I'm going to shift out from the front, store that in the variable. So now removed is holding on to the number 1. And then console log array, which is 2, 3, because I took out 1. And then the removed element is 1. Okay, same thing as pop, right? And so yeah. Any questions on shift? Okay, so unshift is the same thing as push, except we're gonna add something, right? So adds an element to the front of an array, not the back, right? So I'm going to copy this, unshift, like this. So instead of push, I'm going to do unshift. So unshift takes an element. So I should say unshift takes an argument and adds x to the front of an array. So we're gonna unshift again. I don't like unshift is like so like what? Like how is that related to push? Right? There's such different words. Also unshift, like how does that remind you of like adding something? Unshift is like I feel like it's when you release the shift key on your keyboard. That's an unshift. How does it have anything to do with adding something? Anyway, unshift 4 is going to put a 4 here. And then unshift 5 is going to put a 5 in front. And then 6 is going to put a 6 in front. Ooh. So Angie is getting very fancy. And she's asking, can you chain a bunch of unshifts one after the other? And the answer is, unfortunately, no, you cannot. You can chain array methods for sure. You just can't do it in this situation. So, if I do this. So the reason we can't do this, right? The reason we can't do this, maybe shift is like you shift everything over. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you shift everything over one space. Okay, so the reason this doesn't work is because we basically have to inspect what this returns. Okay, so if I say let result equals this, right? This is still going to add 4 to the beginning, and then let me console log result. Result is 4, and so it's a little sneaky. But this result 4 is not what I just put in here. I know it's still 4. This result is the number of things in my array as a result of putting the 4 in. So instead of 4, let's say I call this like, 999, right? So I put 999 in the beginning, and the result is 4 as in, okay, there are now 4 things in this array. Okay? And because this is 4, this whole thing is 4, right? Like this, like if result is 4, that means array.unshift 999, that thing, that entity itself is 4. And it would be, if I wanted to chain this, it would be as if I'm doing 4.unshift, right, 5. So basically doing this is the same thing as doing 4.unshift 5. Because this thing we know is 4, because this is what I've put into result, and result shows that it's 4. And I can't do 4.unshift 5, right? So once again, if I just run this, it says array.unshift.unshift is not a function. So what this is saying is 4.unshift is not a function. 4 does not have a method called unshift on it. Unshift only exists on arrays. So what was the problem? The problem is that this thing returns a number, not an array. Okay? And so this is actually interesting, an interesting scenario that you bring up. So I'm just gonna, let's take a quick detour because this would be cool to be able to do that, right? And so let's say like there's a workshop problem where we have to do this. We should be able to chain these things. So it's gonna say I'm gonna say function, right? Cool unshift takes a number, and it takes a number and an array. Ooh, hold on a second. Never mind. I think we have to learn about a couple more things to do this, but that's basically the answer here. And the thing we're looking for, we're like, you want to chain these methods one after the other. You want to make sure that that method that you're using returns an array, not instead of a number, right? And so the other methods that do this is slice, for example, and there's also other things that we won't learn, but there's .map, .filter, and these other things that will allow you to do that. Okay. Okay, so that was unshift. Index of. So index of is, I think, a less preferable way of doing includes. So I like includes a lot. I think index of is overkill, but let's learn about it. So index of returns the index of an element of an element x within an array, and then returns -1 if the element is not found. If the element is not found. So let's say I have an array equals A, B, C. And so if let's say like I want to see is B in this array, right? Where is B? I'm gonna say array dot index of, right? Capital O here, not index of, and then the thing that I'm looking for. Is 1. So what this is saying is this B is located at index 1. So it returns the index of the thing that I'm looking for. And if it's not there, so array.index of, let's say, capital B, right, that's not in here, it's going to return -1. Okay? So it's going to return -1. And that's it. And this will work, sorry? Amazing. A really good question. So what happens if I have another B here, right? Which index is it going to return? And it's going to be the first instance. So I'll say if multiple are found, returns first index. So this is a really good question because there's another method that's actually called last index of, or I think that's what it's called at least, last index of, which will kind of find the last index of this thing. Yes, so this is going to give you the last thing, the last occurrence of that thing. Good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So how many times does this thing occur? So that's a good like workshop question. There isn't. There isn't like a direct way to do that. There is a way to use another method called dot filter. Okay, and so dot filter is highly advanced, and you're going to learn about it in the actual immersive program. So there's like the 3-month program, and then in the beginning there's a 4-week foundations, right, where you just like do all the pre-work before it starts, and there you're going to go over dot filter, dot map, and dot reduce, which is very again more advanced. But as a quick preview, filter, right, filter is what it sounds like. It filters, right, filters an array down to qualifying elements. Okay, so if I have let array is A, B, C, B, E, B, something like this, and let's say I just want the B's, right, what you would do is array.filter, okay, and it's going to look a little freaky, but basically you put in a function, an arrow function like this. This is a function in itself, right? In the same way that I would say like const my func equals, and then I would put this function like this, right? This right here is a function, and usually it's like, okay, this takes a number, and then do whatever. So this is the function, and this function takes like any one of these array elements. So what is each one of these array elements? It's actually a letter, right? And we want to return, right, whether like we have to return true or false based on the letter. So if letter equals B equals P, return true, okay, and then else, we don't even need an else because it returns, right? Let's say return false. Okay. Oops. array has already been declared. Oh, oops. There it is. And this is actually a little bit redundant. Like, what I'm saying is, like, if something is true, return true. If something is false, return false. So what I can actually just do is return this. Return this. Because, like, letter, like, let's say A equals B. Is that true or false? That's false. Okay, so this literally will become false and is returning false, right? Or let's say B is the letter and that equals B. That's true. Return true. So it's like, if you ever have a situation where you're in a situation where, like, if this return true, if this return false, just return that thing. Just return that condition itself, because that will evaluate to true or false. And because this is just one line, we actually don't need the curly braces, and we can actually just do this. So this will just filter it down to anything that's a B, and then I can be like, okay, well, I want everything that's not a B, right? How about everything that's not a B? What's that? So to answer your original question, like, how many B's are in here? Well, this right here is an array itself, right? Array.filter, all of this stuff, returned this array, and if this whole thing is an array, then I should just be able to get the length of this, which is 3. Cool. So there isn't an explicit function to get the number of things, but you can use filter and then dot length after it. Sneak peek. Okay, so now we're gonna look at includes. So index of is I mean, I give it more hate than it deserves. Index of is very useful, right? It lets you find out, like, where something is in the array, but I would say, like, probably 99% of the time, you don't really care where the thing is. You just care whether that element is in the array, yes or no, right? You just want to see whether there exists an element in the array, not necessarily where it is in the array. So includes X, returns true false depending on whether X exists within the array. So if I use this exact same example here, so let's say instead of index of, I want to includes. So is B in here, right? True. Okay, is B in here? Yes, it is. So this is going to be true. Is C in here? This is going to be true, right? Is Z in here? False, right? And it's just like, it's very, very clean. It's very straightforward. So if there was a problem that asked you, like, hey, can you check if this letter is a vowel or not, right? Which is actually a pretty common problem, like to check whether something is a vowel. There are two ways to solve that problem. You can use dot includes, or you can use dot index of, okay? So, let's say the question is check if a letter is a vowel, right? So if I have let letter equals a, let's say, like, I, what I can, to check whether this is a vowel, I can actually just have an array, okay, called vowels, and this can be A, E, I, O, U, okay, and I can have a function that's like check if vowel, and this takes a letter, and I'm gonna check, basically what I'm gonna return, right, is vowels dot includes letter. Does this set of vowels include this letter, true or false? So if I do check if vowel, and I'm actually just gonna toss this. If I say check if vowel I, true. Yes, I is a vowel, right? L, false. No, L is not a vowel, right? So it's very handy, and it's very, like, easy to reason about, right? Is the letter included in the list of vowels? Then it must be a vowel, right? and if it's not, then it must not be a val. And so to do this exact same thing using index of, right, is slightly tougher because index of actually returns a number, right? It returns like where it is located, right? And so if I say, let's just let index equals this, okay, and the letter is going to be I, so I'm going to console log index true, right? So I is in, or sorry, check if I'll, why did this return true? Oh, this is includes index of, sorry. So I is at index 2, right? Because that's where it is. So you basically have to check whether this index is like not -1, because -1 means it's not in here. So if I do z, then it's -1, right? So you get the index, and then you do like if index is -1, return false, right? And then else return true. So because z is at index -1 because it wasn't found, you return false. And if it's e, it's frozen right now, but e is going to realize that it's at index 1, and because 1 is not -1, return true. So it's a little more roundabout, and I want to stress this. And if you encounter a problem where it's asking like where you have to like search within an array, really try to think, do I need to know where it is, right? If so, then I'm going to use index of. If I only need to care whether it exists somewhere, right in here, then I want to use includes. Okay. Any questions on index of or includes? Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay, so we're almost there. We just have reverse and slice. So reverse is exactly what it sounds. It reverses the order of an array. So if I say let array equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I do array.reverse with nothing passed to it, it reverses the order of the array. So reverses of the array. Yeah, so it can be, I guess, useful in its own way. Making a new array, great question. Great question. It does not make a new array. So this is something that we should talk about. It does not. It mutates. So I'm gonna mutates the original array, as in it does not generate a new array. So what this means is if I do array.reverse and I console log the array afterwards, we see that the array itself has been reversed. The array itself has been reversed. Okay, so just be mindful that if you reverse something, you are changing the order of that array, the original array, and anyone else who's like referencing that array will have all of those, like all of their plans changed because you've reversed it. And why this is important, we're gonna discover a little bit in slice. Okay, but just make sure to know that reverse mutates the original array, right? Which means it actually manipulates and edits the original array and does not generate a new one in the process. Is it kind of like a mirror view? Yeah, it's kind of like a mirror view. Yeah, sort of like you just reflected this. Cool. So slice, right? it does something, but I'm gonna make sure to write that it does not mutate the original array, and it returns a new array. Okay, and slice is actually kind of the most. Oh, interesting. Hopefully we didn't lose everything here. Fail to connect. Is everyone else still there? Did I lose internet connection? Okay, cool. Man, Rebel's really struggling. Opening a new one. So sometimes I just like take the link and I open it in a new window and it just like loads. So that might that's something just like forces it to work. So slice does not mutate. Oh, so it didn't quite save everything. So slice does not mutate the original array. It generates a new array. And slice is sort of the most involved out of all these things that we learned, but it's also like the most powerful. And I would say it's probably the thing that's you're going to be using the most during the assessment. So slice, okay, grabs or I guess like kind of generates a slice, aka or subsection of the array. Okay, generates a slice or a subsection. Yeah, what is this? Yeah, hidden lime green equations. Yeah, that's a good one. Lime green. I feel that's like a color that I haven't seen in a while. Let's just take a look. Oh, they just said lime. I guess lime green is the same thing as lime. Lime green is a multi-use skincare company. Okay. Cool. Sorry. So so like basically, right? Let's say you have something like this. Let's say you have array equals, call this letters. This is A, B, C, D, E, F, and we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have this array, and let's say I want a subsection of the array. As in, I want like a slice of it. Like if this is like a pizza, right? I just want like a part of it, okay? And so the way it works is slice. So slice. There's like 3 situations, right? So dot slice takes up to 2 arguments, okay? And so we're just gonna go through like all the situations here, starting with 2 arguments, okay? And it's like dot slice. So if it takes 2 arguments. 2 arguments, right? What you're doing is dot slice from start and then end, okay? Where start denotes where we begin, inclusive. I'm gonna go over what inclusive means. And then end denotes where we end, exclusive. Okay, from 2 to 5. Yeah. So it's almost like a start end, or you can also think of it as dot slice from 2. I kind of like that better. So from here to here. So if I want to get, let's say, BCD, right? I just want BCD. So what you're gonna do is letters dot slice from B, right? So where it denotes where we begin, inclusive, so we have to start at index 1 because it's including B, up to the end, which is D, right? Except we're actually ending at index 4 because it's exclusive. So the end is exclusive. So basically it's like I want to start from 1 and I want to go until 4, but not including 4. I want to go up until 4, but just before it, right? And so this is going to be BCD. Okay. So again, dot slice from 1 to 4 means from 1 starting with B to 4 but not including E. So it's going to be these three. Quite a mouthful, but you'll start getting used to it. So this right here is B, and notice it's an array itself, right? It doesn't give you like B, C, D, like the letters kind of individually. It actually gives you a new box full of just what you want, just a slice of things that you want. And the crucial thing is this: it does not mutate the original array, as in the original array, right, remains untouched. So if I console log letters, after slicing, letters is still intact, right? The original blueprint exists, right? We just took a slice of it and basically just like photocopied it and kind of like made a new array for ourselves, but the original array has stayed the same. And so if you want to do something with BCD, you know, you can say this as a variable. So I can say like my letters, okay? And then so I'm going to console log my letters. And these are just the letters that I want. Okay. Can also slice from, let's say, 0 to 4. Okay. So this is going to be ABCD. Why is it ABCD? Because I'm going to start at index 0. I'm going to start with A, including A, and go all the way to index 4, but not including 4. And so it's really just going to be these. Oh, here? Oh, so the new one is going to be the result of slicing this thing. So like the slice from 0 to 4, right? But that's just like because I want to do something with it and I want to like store it in my own variable. But I can call this anything, right? I can call this like, I don't know, Bob. And that's still gonna be the thing, right? That I sliced out. Yes, yes. And this thing that you've basically like made a copy of, right? Most likely you're gonna want to do something with it, but I mean maybe you might not, right? You might actually just like do something weird where like immediately after you slice it, you say like, okay, give me like the first thing in here, which is gonna be A, because that's the first thing in this thing that you've sliced, but it kind of like almost always you're going to probably do something with the result of this, right? And in order to do that, you have to capture it in a variable. In the same way that like, if you're popping, right? If I have an array and I pop out the last element 3, like most likely I'm gonna want to do something with 3, right? So this is gonna be 3, but like if I don't assign it to another variable called removed, then that 3 sort of disappears and it's gone. So that's really the purpose of storing it in a variable. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah, good question. So what happens if I do, well, let me call this like sliced. So yeah, what happens if we do this? Letters dot slice from 1 to 1. Interesting. It's an empty array. It's an empty array. What if I do like 1 to like -1? Ooh. Okay. So this is actually it's good to get to this. Okay. So this is another possibility. So let me just read this real quick. Slice doesn't generate a variable for the newly created string. Yes, exactly. You have to create a variable yourself. So let's say that I wanted to go from B, right? I mean, let's say we want to do this B to E, right? What would you do? You would do sliced. I'm gonna select sliced. You would go from 1 up until E, so basically 5, right? Because that's where it ends, but it's exclusive. So B, C, D, E, right? So it's this slice. Now let's say that you basically want to go up until the end, except for the last letter, right? Because that's really what this is, right? I'm starting at 1 and I'm going all the way till the end of the array, except I exclude that last letter. Okay, so if you know that you want everything except for the last letter, you can actually use a negative number. Okay, so I'm gonna say a negative index starts slicing from the back and counts forwards. So if I do let sliced equals letters dot slice from 1 to -1, what this basically means is start at 1, which is B, and go until -1, which basically means go to the back and start counting forwards. And so take the F out and just do this. Okay, so this is going to give B, C, D, E. And another example of this is, let's say I do slice from 1 to -2, right? What this means is start at 1 and then go all the way to the end and go forward twice. So basically I want everything except for the last 2 things, right? Starting from here. And so that'll give us BCD. Cool. Okay, and this is like super confusing. Like, don't do this. Like, I don't encourage this in any way. But you could have both of them be negative numbers, right? So you could actually have like -3 and -2, and this would just be D. Why is that? Because negative means go to the back. So I'm gonna go to the back and go 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm gonna start here, and then I want to go all the way up until start from the back and go 1, 2. So I'm just gonna get D. But like, this is just so unnecessary. This is very confusing. Basically, just yeah. As behind, you mean in front of? So let slice equals letters dot slice, let's say 5 and then 1, something like this. Good question. So it is also empty. So we're basically starting from index here and trying to go to here. But I guess like since it's kind of like putting the same numbers in, right? Because it can't get any like slice of that. It just returns, I guess, an empty array. But this is an interesting fact, right? Because it doesn't like, it might, like, you might have expected it to error and say like, oh, the indexes, the bounds that you've defined are invalid or something, but it actually just returns an empty array, which is pretty chill. How would you get F included? Great question. So you would basically start from 5, right? You would start from 5 and go until 6. And there's actually, so the next thing that we're going to learn about slice is the case where there's only one argument. So so far we've done 2 arguments. The one argument is super useful and I don't want to say more common, but it's super common. So let's say we have one argument, okay? And let me bring this down again because this is just coming up to be a lot. So I have letters here, and if I have one argument, then what I'm really doing is I'm just slicing from the start. Slice from. Start denotes where to begin, okay? And basically, right, the lack of a second argument implies going all the way to the end of the array. So start here and never look back. Just go all the way to the end. So what does this mean? Let's bring these indexes here. What does this mean? So if I do letters dot slice 1, just one argument, only a starting position, no ending position. Oops, letters, sorry. Gives me, it basically starts at 1 and just blasts to the end. Goes all the way to the end. Basically it's saying like, okay, if you don't tell me where to stop, it doesn't, if you don't give me an ending position, I'm just gonna assume that you want the whole thing. And this is super useful. So in for your question of like, how do I get just f, right? How do I get just f? The letters dot slice 5, and that's just f. So basically, it's like start at index 5 and just like go all the way to the end, right? Which it's already at the end. And so the one argument slice is also super useful. Where could this be useful? So it could be useful in capitalizing a letter. So by the way, remember like earlier we learned that strings and arrays are super similar. Like they have indexes, they have dot length, and they do all these things. They also both have dot slice. So I'll say name equals Kimberly, right? I can do name dot slice from 1 to 5, let's say, and that'll be imb, right? Yeah, you can also do just slice -1. Exactly. So what if you just want the last letter, right? You can do name dot slice 7, right? Or probably a more nifty would be to do -1. As in, I just want the last letter. I want to start kind of 1 over from the back and just go all the way to the end, which really is just the last letter. Great point. So yeah, I'm gonna put this here. So this right here, right, slices off the first letter, and this right here slices off the last letter. Okay, so when would slice 1 be useful? It's if I want to like capitalize this. So like, let's say I want to capitalize the K, right? How do I capitalize this? It would be name bracket 0. This is K, right? So dot 2 uppercase. This is capital K plus, okay, plus name dot slice 1. Okay, what is name dot slice 1? What does that mean? That means I'm going to start in index 1 and I'm going to go all the way till the end. So it's going to be Imberly, right? It's going to be Imberly. So it's capital K plus Imberly. And so you can, formalize this into a function, like a generic function that takes any string and capitalizes any string. So that's what's cool about functions, right? So we can say let capitalize takes a string and basically returns that string capitalized. And so now we have this function that's like nicely encapsulated. So I can say capitalize name, which gives Kimberly. I can say capitalize hello and welcome. So that'll capitalize the first thing. Cool. So slice is super useful. You can use it on both arrays and strings. You're gonna have to use it in the exam for sure. Okay, so there's how are we doing on time? Okay, so there's one last case for slice, which is 0 arguments. 0 arguments. And this is just like dot slice. Boom. With absolutely nothing passed into it. And so what this means is it's going to start from the beginning and go to the end. So basically it's like, okay, you're not telling me where to start, you're not telling me where to finish. I'm just gonna start from the beginning and end at the end. So we'll have letters, and then we're gonna do letters dot slice. That is literally just the array itself, right? And then you might be like, well, what is the point of this, right? why would anyone do this? It's just I didn't accomplish anything. It's just the same thing. It's just like using letters itself. Can anyone think of why this might be used? It's a very subtle reason. Yes. Miranda says it's to make a copy of the array. And that's absolutely true. So if you remember, we learned that slice does not mutate the original array and it generates a new array, right? It comes up with a new array. Okay? So in this example we have letters, right? The problem is if let's say like you're using letters and I'm using letters. So like we're both using letters. So you're doing something and I'm doing something. And so like I guess this is you, right? And what you do is like console log letters bracket 0, right? And this is A, and you like expect, so you expect this to be A, right? Because that's the first letter. And then me, I'm like messing around, and I decide to do like this. I decided to do letters dot. How do I get rid of that first thing? It's shift, right? So this like removes A. Okay, and so now if I console log letters, it's B C D E F. So I actually took the A out, right? And so what if I like did this first, right? What if I like just took out the A, right? And then you console log the first letter. What happens to you? You expected this to be A, but it's B because I messed with your source of data. I mutated this thing. This thing that we both are using, I decided to change it, which kind of throws your expectation out the window. And so before I mess with it, right? Before I decide to just like, mutate the original data source that you're dependent on, I want to safely make a copy of this thing. So I can say let my letters equals letters.slice. And so like yes, this is going to be, the same thing as this, but it's actually going to be a copy. Copy of letters. Okay, so now if I do my letters dot shift, right, I'm going to get rid of A, so my letters will be just B, C, D, E, F without the A, and for you, your letters are still going to be intact, and I won't have messed with your stuff. So your letter's still A, my array looks different, right? So slice is very useful if I need to make a copy of another array, but I don't want to mess it up for anyone else who's dependent on it. Yeah, exactly. So Christelle says this is to not delete old information that might be needed later on. Exactly. Can you do const letters? Great question. You can totally do const letters. So I can actually make both of these things const. Const is fine. You can get a copy of something that's defined using const. It's not going to prevent you. It's not going to be like, oh, you use const, you're not allowed to slice this. You can use const. Perhaps what's more surprising is this. Like I've defined an array using const, and yet I'm like actually mutating it. I'm shifting something out of it. Right? I'm shifting something out of it. That seems like not allowed, right? So if I have I'm gonna say const nums equals 1, 2, like I shouldn't be able to push 3 in here because it's const, and const should not be changed, right? And yet I can. Okay, and this is very surprising, right? The reason I can do this is because const doesn't allow specifically reassignment of a variable, right? But the variable itself can be mutated. So I just can't reassign this variable. So what I mean by that is I can't like do this and then try to do nums equals 1, 2, 3. This is not allowed, where I'm trying to replace what's here. So think of const as I think the best way to think about this as like just like a lock, right? Like a locker. Okay? So when you say const nums, what you're doing is you've reserved this locker, and that's just there, right? But inside of the locker, you can put whatever you want, right? You can like, put all of your belongings in, you can take stuff out, put stuff in, but that locker is that locker. Now when you try to then replace that locker with a new locker, right? That's not allowed. That's the reassignment aspect of it. But once you have the locker itself, you can change what's stored there. Does slice work with nested arrays? Oof. That is a deep question. Alice just asking a searing question here. Can we do dot slice with nested arrays? The answer is yes and no. Okay, and this will be the last thing before we do the workshop. So I'm gonna say array is 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's say 5, right? So can I clone this thing? Okay, and the answer is yes, I can. Console log clone. So this is, remember I said yes and no? This is the yes part. This is why it's yes. Okay, so I have a clone. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say original array and then clone. Okay, it's thinking. So now I'm gonna remove something from the original. So I'm gonna say original dot pop. Okay, and I'm gonna console log both again. Oops, array dot pop. I'm gonna rename this original. Array. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just kind of going crazy here. So the original is this. I decide to clone it, and then what do? I pop, as in I remove the last element from the original array. So now I have this without the 5, right? And the clone is still intact. So now we have successfully cloned this thing, okay? So in that sense, yes. Now, a very, very, very subtle thing that happened is that this nested array actually was not cloned. So this thing in here, actually they both refer to the same array in memory. So only that outer array was cloned, and it's like it's shallow elements, but this deeper portion of a nested array, they are kind of like entangled. And so what this means is, well, how do I get to an array? I do original at 2, right? If I do original at 2, that's 3, 4, because that's this. If you're looking at this in terms of indexes, this is an index 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So this array itself is at index 2. So now let's say I want to do original at 2 dot push the letter A. Okay, so I'm going to console log the original. So the original array, I pushed A into literally a nested array, right? And what's going to be disconcerting is if I go to clone, the clone has also received this. So even though I only pushed something into the original one, it also affected the clone, because the clone and the original are intertwined through this weird relationship. Okay, so dot slice, very important to remember, is when you're slicing a nested array is a shallow copy. It's a shallow copy, and any nested arrays will not be copied. Will not be copied. Can you? Yeah. Great question. Yes, it's bidirectional. So clone at 2 dot push, let's say x, or say question marks, right? And it cancels like both the original and the clone afterwards. It affects both. It affects both. And we're gonna actually talk about this phenomenon a little more in like 3 or 4 lectures. You guys are like really advanced, and you ask a lot of like questions that are ahead of your time. So yeah. Why this happens is in another lecture. Yeah, it's a reference. It's a reference. Um, so, man, I feel like I'm going over way too many topics, but it seems like you're already sort of there and interested, so like I'm just gonna do it anyway. Um, so the way you can think about this is like this little 3-4 is the same reference for both original and clone. So even though original and clone are two different people, let's think of them as two different people, they both reference the same thing, right? And you can think of this as two different people living in the same house. So let's say like you guys are roommates, you're roommates, and what do you share? You share like a street address, right? You both live in the same place. And so if someone asks you, what is your address? And that person asks your roommate, what is your address? You're both going to respond with the same thing, right? Because you both live in the same place and you both refer to the same place. And hopefully this doesn't happen, but if your house, like if your house burns down, right? What does that mean? That means your house burned down, and that means your roommate's house also burned down, right? It burned down for both of you. So whatever happens to this house happens to the both of you. And that reference to the same address is literally the same thing that happens in the computer. And we call it a memory address, if you remember that term, right? So both original and clone reference the same address in memory. And so if anything changes to that thing, it propagates and updates for both entities. Yeah, we're going to talk about this in a few days. Maybe not this deep, but now you know. Any questions? I think we covered a lot. This is the first time I've like covered this much for this class, and we did like filter. Like I've never brought up filter before. This is really cool. Okay. If there are no more questions, I'm gonna